case you missed it, this thing was the one that committed the mass shooting that killed 5 people and injured, 27 in Philly over the weekend. You probably didn't see much of it or hear much of it. Why? Well, for starters, look at the picture. And secondly, it's transgendered. I just find it ironic now how all of a sudden the media is saying, we don't need to talk about their sexuality or race during these terrible events. We need to focus on gun violence. Yet when the perpetrator looks like me, Biden would have been on a podium that night talking about how white supremacy is the problem in this country. But because the shooter looks like that and identifies as something else, the problem's not them. The problem's the guns, right? Right.
So just a few days ago, a mass shooting happened in Philadelphia where 5 people were killed and numerous people were left injured. Now, this shooting will not be covered with full intensity as it should by the, the national media, because as a shooter, at first was described as being transgender due to, online photos where he recently posted where he's dressed up as a woman. And, also due to the fact that his name is Kim Brady, which to me, comes off pretty effeminate name, But however, now a lot of people are saying that the shooter is not transgender, but just a man who likes to cross-dress. So now will the national media cover the story with full intensity? I'm sure we all know the answer to that one, because now he fits in another protected class. He's black.
Wait a minute. Peter didn't shoot my son. I did. Peter was just taking the blame for me. He's a good friend.
Mr. Brown, what exactly are you saying?
I'm saying that I, Cleveland Brown, a black man, shot Cleveland Brown Jr., another black man. Wait, where did everybody go? You want to make the media go away? Just mention black-on-black crime.
Yep. And the victims of this horrific shooting are black. So apparently there's no other angle. There's no other angle to go on here for the media, but just to focus on the gun. The inanimate object that can do nothing unless a person, uses it for ill intentions, like killing innocent people. Yeah, let's focus on that.
This is not just a Baltimore thing. We have to be honest. This is the United States of America. This is our longest standing public health challenge. And we need to focus on gun violence, regardless of where it happens, right? Whether it's in inner city Baltimore, whether it's in suburbia, whether it's in rural America.
The mayor of Baltimore after another deadly holiday weekend in America. Now, data shows there were at least 17 mass shootings across the country. The deadliest was in Philadelphia, where a shooter opened fire at random, killing 5 people. NBC News' George Solis has more.
The accused shooter, 40-year-old Kim Brady Carragher, appeared in a Philadelphia court, facing multiple charges for the July 3rd rampage that police say killed 5, including 15-year-old DeJuan Brown. According to the city's Office of the Comptroller, in Philadelphia, there have been 190 fatal shootings this year. Philly Mayor Jim Kenney calling for gun reform at a news conference today that was planned before Monday's mass shooting.
Make no mistake, the root of the problem is the proliferation of guns in our city and in our country. Guns are the common denominator in every single shooting.
Typical media misconception. Yes, guns are the common denominator, but the main one that they always want to avoid addressing, as we all know, is mental health, especially when it doesn't fit the narrative. I mean, after the mass shooting nearby here in Allen, Texas, at the Outlet Mall a few months ago, the media was quick to point out, the various white supremacist websites the shooter recently visited. Well, in that case, do the same thing here. I mean, it was noted that the shooter, was a huge supporter of Black Lives Matter. And we all know by now, at least, Black Lives Matter is a far left radical group that operates under the mirage that they are fighting for black people, when we all know that this is far from true. I mean, the dude here, think about it. He claims to support Black Lives Matter, but then kills 5 black people. I mean, can we make this make sense? But what really annoys me here is how members of the so-called LGBTQ community get to dictate who is and who is not a part of their community. And being a black man, I'm like, nah, bruh, it doesn't work that way. I mean, even we got to take the good and the bad, all the way from Martin Luther King, all the way down to O.J. Simpson. But apparently, they seem to be above reproach. I mean, I remember last year after the shooting at a gay club in Colorado, you had this guy on CNN tell us this.
Natalie, when we started the show, we got a little bit of news earlier that the attorneys for the shooter are now saying that the shooter is non-binary, and the shooter would like to use the pronouns they, them, and this is for the court in all court papers, and that's what Anderson Aldrich's attorneys are saying. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think that's complete ludicrous. I believe they're just saying that because they want to have the easy way out on this. That's really, really offending, especially being a transgender woman myself, that a male, which it was obvious with the mugshot, that's a man. That's not a non-binary person, because in no way, shape, or form could they appear as a woman the next day. It's really offensive to even hear that they're playing that role. And if they're non-binary, why would you go after the club where you feel safe at?
Yo, you saw how that dude was rolling his eyes at the idea that the shooter being a part of his community? But that's the thing. You can't have it both ways. You just can't. But they believe they can because, I mean, come on. If people make an adult man believe that he's a woman, you think that it stops there? They're going to believe a whole bunch of other irrational things. That's why, in my opinion, you don't affirm this way of living. You be respectful, of course, but you must always call out the truth. Don't engage in preferred pronouns. We're not helping them by doing stuff like that. If anything, we're making things worse, as you can see here. And back to the shooter in Philadelphia, here is an activist I was looking up by the name of Azza Khalif, who I believe is just gay and not trans, but nowadays I can never tell. So anyway, here he is trying to make sure we all know that the person is not trans.
There are certain pictures that are circulating. Some of you may be aware of those pictures. Have the shooter in one picture as male and other pictures dressed in female attire or female outfits. They have used those pictures to attack trans people, and particularly trans women of color, which are extremely vulnerable to violence in our community. I want to set the record straight because language is extremely important when we're talking about anything dealing with violence in trans community. The suspect or the shooter has not identified themselves as trans. They have only identified themselves as male. And that's the language that will be used until further developments if they change that type of language. But the language that is spewed out by the conservative press is violent and is dangerous and is targeting trans women of color. It's rallying the community to be violent. And we're better than that. We're better than that. We have our trans women and our trans men living in these communities, working, thriving in the communities. They are not killers. They are the most vulnerable to violence. They want to live their lives, and they have every right to do so.
Now, a few things here. First, he's correct. At this point, the shooter has not identified as being trans. However, his grandmother stated that he is gay. So according to her, he's a part of the G part of the LGBTQ community. Second, where is this violence this guy is talking about? There is none. Well, let me correct myself. I won't say none because there's always some level of, violence and bigotry out there, that will always exist, but not to the degree that this man's referring to. I mean, think about it. After the mass shooting in Nashville by Aubrey Hale, by the way, we're still waiting on the manifesto from her. FBI, come on. After that shooting, there was no uptick in violence against trans people. I mean, think about it. They were marching safely in pride parades last month in June. So you can miss me with all that, all that BS. We know that's a lie. That's based upon, your feelings about the issue and not the reality of the situation. I mean, when society coddles a group of people like this, they tend to develop a God complex of themselves. And the higher ups behind the mainstream media, they know this. So they will use the story not to address mental health, or hell, they will not even use it to address the radicalization of Black Lives Matter. And they definitely won't use it to address the black on black crime issue here in America. But of course, they will use it to address something that will make society weaker, which is more gun control. So all I say is, man, people, don't be fooled, but let me know, leave a comment down below. Tell me, what am I missing? Who's more at fault here? The gun or the so-called heterosexual man?